Good morning and welcome to today's webinar, CX Trends 2022. We will hear from Heineken how they leverage technology to continuously evolve their customer experience. We will also consider the key findings of the latest ContactBabel research. And of course, we will evaluate what trends to embrace for a great CX in 2022. Let me start off with a few housekeeping announcements. The webinar will be recorded and we will share the recording with you afterwards via email. You can also ask questions during the webinar, and I will quickly show you how to do that in case you are not that familiar with the application. All you need to do is click on the little orange button with the white arrow. That will expand the control panel and open up a set of options. Just go down to the questions area and type in your question and hit send. We will allow time for questions at the end of the webinar, but just in case we run out of time, we will contact you afterwards. So be assured we will address all your questions. We will also do a few polls during the webinar to get your input. And just to let you know how this will all work today, the webinar will consist mainly of a discussion among our panelists who are joining us now via webcam. But we do start off with a few slides to set the scene with some eye-opening facts and figures from the latest ContactBabel research. I can see Steve. I'm just waiting for Alex and Emma Jane to join us.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Ladies first, so welcome to Emma Jane McKeown, Customer Centricity Channel Manager at Heineken, the second largest brewer in the world with a portfolio of over 300 international and local brands. Good morning, Emma Jane. It's lovely to see you. How are you today?
Good morning, everyone. I'm great. Thank you very much. Delighted to be here this morning.
So are we. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your responsibilities at Heineken?
For sure, yeah. So as you mentioned, I'm our Customer Centricity Manager. And really this kind of is an interesting position in that it kind of positions me in the middle of the organization. So I work very much kind of cross-functionally with our commercial teams, our customer service teams, obviously our sales rep on the ground. And really my role is to try to make sure that we're always listening. We have a regular drumbeat to our customers. So we're really understanding constantly what their needs are. Obviously their needs are evolving now at a pace that we've never seen before, and that we're responding to those needs by continually improving our customer experience.
That sounds great, Emma Jane. Thank you. Just to introduce the rest of the panel, welcome to Steve Morrell, Managing Director of Contact Center Industry Expert and Analyst, ContactBabel. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning.
And thank you for joining us again. It's really good to have your expertise on another webinar of ours. And last but not least, welcome to Alex Black, our Chief Technology Officer here at Enghouse Interactive, and of course, best place to talk about technology trends. My name is Astrid Pocklington. I'm a marketing manager here at Enghouse Interactive, and I will be hosting today's session. So, before we talk about the things that can improve the customer experience, let's see if we can agree on what a positive customer experience actually means to us, and who would be better positioned to answer this question than our audience. After all, we are all customers ourselves. So without further ado, I will launch our first poll. And if you could please tell me, what factor do you think is the most important in driving a positive customer experience in the contact center? Is it first contact resolution, choice of channels, short call duration, or the 24/7 availability of the agents. Okay. Almost half of our audience have voted, so I'll give it another few seconds. Okay. I can already see a clear winner. Collecting the last few responses. Okay, let's close the poll and share the results with us. Steve, are you surprised by the vote, or did you expect this outcome?
I would say I'm relieved by the vote, actually, because this is very much in line with what we've found consistently over the years, both what businesses believe that customers want and also what customers themselves report that they really value.
Okay, thank you. Right, Steve will now continue to dive a little deeper into the subject matter of customer experience trends by laying down a few important facts and figures. So over to you, Steve.
Thank you. So what we're going to look at today are results of the major surveys that we do each year. So we survey 200 UK contact centres twice a year, as well as surveying 1,000 customers. And the large majority of our research is free to download from our website. And today's presentation is going to look at some of the trends driving customer experience in 2022 and also beyond. So what do customers really want when they get in touch? This chart's based on a survey of 1,000 customers, as I mentioned, that looks at their top 3 most important factors when they call a company. You can see there that getting an issue resolved first time is most important to pretty much every age group. This is split by age demographics. So that fits in nicely with what we've just seen there. And this is something that the live telephony channel really excels at, getting it done first time, staying with the customer until the job gets done. But we should also note here that customers value a short wait time for a response almost as much, and this is something which telephony channel isn't always great at. Other key points to note here: polite and friendly employees are widely appreciated, and the older generation in particular value UK-based agents. I think more than half of older customers put this in their top 3 priorities. So the next slide shows how this has changed, so how customers have altered their views on what they really value when communicating with an organisation. So we compared data from 2018, back in the good old days, and the 2021 is hot off the press, and it's going to be published in January. So the pandemic's had an effect on some people, probably a lot of people, of reducing their confidence, and that kind of drives the need for reassurance that human contact brings. We see that empathy, emotional intelligence, they're becoming even more important. And also you can see here that, that the polite and friendly employees bit, that's really being valued more than ever. Having issues dealt with first time and handled by the same employee, that removes the need for customers to repeat themselves, especially when changing channels. That's also grown in importance to customers. And that's a kind of key driver for moving to a true omnichannel approach with a single view of the customer across all the channels. One last thing on this chart, it's interesting to see that the importance of having long opening hours has declined massively. This is almost certainly due to people being more familiar with the use of self-service to solve their own issues at any time of day that they actually choose. So I have a couple of slides. It wouldn't be a contact center presentation without mentioning AI. And as we'll see shortly, agents' work is getting more complex, often involves multiple channels. But even the most kind of capable and experienced agent can't be expected to know how to handle every type of interaction across every channel being offered. So we're starting now to see AI working alongside live agents, augmenting their knowledge rather than replacing the agent. So it can do things like suggesting next best actions depending on what's worked previously, and can take over some of the kind of heavy data lifting needed, especially in the post-call phase, which obviously gets agents back on the phone and talking to customers. Now, organizations we can see here are very enthusiastic about AI agent and AI collaboration. And this chart shows the vast majority expect the AI to augment agents and help them rather than to replace them. And pretty much everybody there believes that AI, regardless of the size of the contact center or the vertical market that they're in, is going to be important to their contact center in the future. So the next chart looks at the use of chatbots and automation used in web chat. Now, web chat as a channel has grown massively over the last few years. And the main use of AI is, rather than kind of on the agent desktop, which was what I was talking about there, is mainly about chatbots. And in 2015, only 5% of web chats involve chatbots at all, but this has increased year on year. It's a nice curve beginning to develop there, and now the figure for that is 1/3. There's been a really big jump in the past year, especially when we look there, the ones that are dealt with entirely by automation. It's almost 1 in 8 doesn't get an agent involved at all. And what we're seeing now, rather neatly from my perspective, is a cost differential emerging between the phone channel and the web chat channel, which is kind of correlated with the amount of automation that's being used. So that's an interesting pattern developing. So we look at the rather colourful chart here. The proportion of interactions that's telephony. This chart doesn't show this, but telephony has declined as a proportion of interactions, although the number of phone calls is relatively the same. And telephony is still the most used channel by a long way. Things like it's familiar, it's flexible, it's effective, it gets the job done first time. So, if that's the case, why are customers enthusiastic about using digital channels? And this chart really shows that they are. The main motivation for channel choice, we believe, is the nature of the inquiry. The customer's thinking, not only how can I get this done first time, but what will cause me the least time, the least effort? And the answer is different depending on what they're trying to achieve. So this chart goes back to our 1,000 customer survey. Looked at channels of preference. So we gave them instances of high emotion, high urgency, and high complexity. See if there's any difference between how people wanted to communicate with the business. Now, a couple of things to notice here. Telephony does get the most votes in all 3 of these scenarios. Telelight doesn't in emotion. It did last year, but it's changed this year. But telephony is still a very popular channel, but it doesn't have a majority in any of them. So look at some of the things here. It's interesting when you drive down into data, because you start looking at major differences in demographics as well, which is in the report, but for the sake of brevity, I haven't put that in here. So emotional issues and complaints, they often drive the use of email. Web chat's a popular channel with younger customers, as you would expect, and self-service is often used for urgent matters. Now, customers know that if they pick up the phone, that their request will usually be handled successfully. However, they also expect that they're probably going to have to wait in a queue for a usually undetermined amount of time when they can't do anything else, and this may not be convenient for them. So consequently, they might try a live digital channel instead. So where response times might be quicker, the likes of web chat, or try an asynchronous alternative like email or messaging, where they can just kind of fire and forget the request and come back later in the day to read the response. So it's horses for courses, really. So if we look at the kind of rise of digital channels, this really next chart shows how things have changed since we started tracking this back in 2006. The most obvious thing to note here, we've put in some predictions, by the way. I don't actually know the future, they're just predictions. The most obvious thing to note is that telephony's declined from about 90% in 2006 to around 65% today. I think it's 63 this year, just having done the analysis. And email's risen considerably, tailed off a bit in the last couple of years, but web chat and to a lesser extent social media have really kind of stepped up to the plate for a lot of people. This kind of further supports the findings of the last chart that shows that businesses have to have the capability to handle both voice and digital channels, as that's what their customers actually want. So we need to offer multiple channels, but that's not enough. You need to offer a joined up, seamless, omni-channel approach. And many customers who are starting their journey on a digital channel have to use another channel as well, usually the phone, in order to complete the action successfully. So we've asked here, what proportion of interactions coming initially to these channels, email, web chat, social media, get handled on those channels, or which require the use of another channel to be answered fully. Now, in an ideal world, all of that would be green. everything gets dealt with immediately on that channel. But the reality is very different here, especially for social media. So, yeah, as an example here, 58% of respondents say that web chat interactions can be handled entirely over that specific channel more than 90% of the time. So pretty much always, which is very positive. But 1 in 8 say that another channel is needed in more than half of the cases. For email and social media, it's much more likely that another channel is going to have to get involved. And there's a lot of reasons for this, not all of which can be easily solved. So, for example, for web self-service, which isn't on here, but that requires a lot as well. The 2 main reasons that customers are trying to do something which requires a live agent, and that they also wanted the reassurance of talking to somebody. So we're coming back to that kind of empathy, emotional intelligence, polite-friendly agent type of thing. There's also numerous cases where the customers can't find out what they need to do on the website, even though the functionality is actually there. For failures, if you like, on live digital channels which need another channel to help out, it's usually that the issue is too complex and requires kind of multiple back and forth queries which are easier to handle on a call. And there's also the kind of security issue as well, maybe need to go through security. You can do that on web chat, but not every company or indeed customer is particularly comfortable with that. So I mentioned before, and it kind of builds on this idea of using different channels. It's a necessity. A lot of times customers may want to do this, they may have to do this, but what they really don't want to do is have to repeat their issues again and again. So we need this seamless, joined up omnichannel approach. But it is important to note, even though this is becoming more of an issue for customers, it's important to note that having to use another channel doesn't necessarily mean anything's wrong with a channel or a process. Excuse me. Customers at different stages in their journey will need different things. They might research online, they might want to clarify something quickly with a web chat, deal with a minor issue on the app, and then maybe need the reassurance of talking to a live agent or making a payment. The challenge really is to make sure, as I've said, the journey is joined up, that its history is accessible to all of the agents and applications that need it, and to provide consistent and accurate information across channels.
I guess Steve.
Oh, sorry, am I on mute? I beg your pardon. Right, I will accidentally press that button. I will try that one again. So it's worth having a look at video here. Most of us use video to communicate with our colleagues or watch webinars, but it's also in the contact center now as well. Videos, yeah, we'll admit it's a niche channel. It's it maybe 1% if that, but it does support greater level of empathy and personalization in some circumstances. So this, for example, this chart on the left here is quite interesting. It's split by age group, and this shows people's changing attitudes towards video. Were they always comfortable using it? Were they never comfortable using it? Have they changed during lockdown because they're talking to the grandma on the video and things like this? How have things changed? And this shows really, generally speaking, younger people are more used to using video and have become more comfortable with it over time, and older people, kind of much less so. So depending on the kind of demographic of who you're talking to, who your customers are, this may be a channel that you might want to offer in some circumstances. Main reasons for this, as you can see on the right there, more personalization and empathy, easy to demonstrate products and solutions. So, in some cases, especially in sales, it can be a real benefit. So we look next at cloud-based solutions. Now, we've shown how a modern contact center needs to be able to handle multiple channels, provide a single view of the customer, support agents and knowledge workers elsewhere in the enterprise, in order to get that holy grail of first-time resolution. So this means that things like flexibility, integration, scalability are key, and those are the things that cloud-based solutions are ideally suited to deliver. So this chart shows over the past 10 years, we asked the contact centers have actually implemented cloud-based solutions, how they've, did it give them any advantages? How's that changed over time? So at the moment, we've got 55% of respondents saying that cloud-based solutions gives them no cheaper overall cost of ownership, 80% say more powerful extended functionality, 71% say that it makes it easier to make changes to the system. So, pretty positive. Now, what we thought would be interesting to do is track this over time. And this tracks the kind of net feeling of positivity or negativity with the score of 0 separating the two. So anything above that 0 is positive, and the higher the score, the more positive it is. And it's interesting to see that survey responses around whether cloud delivers a cheaper cost of ownership haven't really changed. It's always been pretty positive. It used to be kind of one of the key things that people looked for when they're doing for cloud. It's kind of less so now. But what we can see here is that kind of functionality and flexibility scores have really improved. And that's really down to kind of solution providers making the stuff that they sell better and easier to use. So this slide's called Changing Role of the Contact Center, and the chart shows call duration. That's something that everybody measures. It's become less important as a kind of key metric or something to aim for, but it's really kind of indicative about how work has changed over time. So this goes back, 17, 18 years there. And what we're seeing here is there's like an 80% increase in service call length since 2004. And that really reflects the increasing complexity of the typical call, because everybody talks about, self-service this, and, calls are more complex that, and it can be difficult to track, quantify that and kind of prove it. But this kind of chart does prove it, because it's not as if the contact center industry's got worse at handling calls. It's not as if people aren't investing in technology, but the call lengths are going up, and they're going up pretty consistently. And the reason for this is complexity. There's also, we will admit, been a move away from judging contact center success by older metrics like call throughput, call duration, and a lot of businesses now look at metrics which impact more on the customer experience. So, for example, as we saw before, first contact resolution, also quality scores as well, really important. Today's agents, they have many different roles. They've got onboarding, ongoing service, post-sale support, tech support sometimes. They're encouraged to upsell and cross-sell, as well as being expected to relationship build within the call. It's no wonder that kind of call lengths are going up, and complexity and the skills required by the agents are also increasing as well. So to summarize, the agent of tomorrow, and also in many cases today, will need to be supported through technology, processes, and probably even a change in business culture in order to own customer issues and deliver that first-time resolution wherever possible, across whatever channel needs to be done. And moving forward, they'll be empowered to do this through the AI-enabled desktops, which can put the correct relevant information on their screen as they need it, depending on how the conversation's going. So it's dynamic changes in real time. Also be able to give advice to the agent within the call, depending on what's happened in the past with similar customers and similar requests, and advise them on the type of action or behavior that's associated with a successful outcome. And I think one of the real challenges here, quite apart from AI actually having to, quote, think, is finding the right balance between giving agents the right sort of information and basically overwhelming them with a wash of stuff every 5 or 10 seconds, so they can't even concentrate on the call. So that'll be a trick. The rise of digital channels we saw before, that's going to continue to increase, although voice will remain the gold standard. We're pretty sure about that. Channels are going to have to work together a lot better, though, in order to meet or exceed customer expectations. Our old friend remote working is not going to go away, but will probably become a hybrid model. And flexibility needed by organizations to deliver first contact resolution will be supported through cloud-based solutions. And a bit of a punt into the far future here, I can see what we say E to E type of interaction. So that's like, for example, a personal AI belonging to the customer is tasked with a job and communicates directly with a business AI to get it done, with no humans on the equation on either side. Mind you, I have been talking about that for the past 20 years and it's still not here, so you can take that with a pinch of salt.
Thank you, Steve. That was very insightful. When you talked about the changing role of the contact center, you made the point that due to the increased uptake of self-service, a lot of the calls actually do end up in the contact center, perhaps require the extended knowledge of the more specialized resources within the business. Now we know that team collaboration tools such as Microsoft Teams can bridge the gap between the front, middle and back office. So I guess for the sake of this discussion, it would be very interesting to know if our audience is using team collaboration tools just internally within their company or also for customer facing interactions. So I would like to launch our next question to the audience. Here you can select multiple answers. For example, if you're using team collaboration tools just internally, select the first option, but perhaps you're using it for customer facing contact. And if you're planning to integrate your contact center functionality with Microsoft Teams, you can select this here as well. And of course, if you have no plans to do so, then select the fourth option. Okay, I'll wait another few seconds. Right, let's have a look at the results. Right, Alex, what do you make of this result? Could it be that perhaps some businesses are still unsure about the benefits of integrating their contact center solutions with Microsoft Teams?
I think it kind of varies a little bit. One of the things we've talked about, you know, if you look at the result there, internally within the team comes out at a very strong number, yeah. And if you think, one of the things we've long said that technologies such as Teams will bring to the picture is knocking down the organisational boundaries that exist between the front office, the middle office, and the back office. And I think that kind of says yes, this technology such as Teams will allow us to do that. And therefore, what that does is by knocking those boundaries down, it effectively makes the organisation more responsive. Because, and to Steve's point, people want issues addressed first time. So if you can take away organisational boundaries that stop that, then that's very powerful. So I'm not surprised to see that such a high number there. What do you call it? I thought I may have seen a bigger number for customer facing contact, but I guess, you know, Teams is still fairly new in the world, and therefore that will probably catch up through time.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you. Well, I would like to continue with the questions. Emma Jane, are you still there? Perfect, I can see you now. That's great. We've talked a lot about good and bad customer experiences already. From your perspective at Heineken's, how has that been? Has that changed at all during the pandemic?
Look, I think for sure I'm not sure if change is the right word. I think more the pandemic has accelerated everything, including kind of customer service. And I think it feels really, really obvious to say this, but when we think about customer service, it always has to start with having that solid understanding of the customer needs. In Heineken, we call it being customer obsessed. And I think now more than ever, and definitely accelerated by the pandemic, customer needs are changing and evolving at such an accelerated pace. So it's really, really important that we're in a position, I suppose, firstly, to hear from them regularly and more regularly than we ever did before, to really kind of understand what their needs are, and how we're going to meet those needs, and ultimately what we can do better to solve their pain points. But also I think it's really important that we're actioning what we're hearing. So I think listening actively is great, and our customers are very open to us talking to them regularly, but if we're not actioning anything, it can be very frustrating. So it's, I think, a combination of both, and ensuring, I suppose, that the business is set up, and by the business I mean that cross-functionally we're set up to be able to respond to what our customers are telling us, so that we're continually improving the customer journey, and ultimately by doing that, I guess, improving our customer experience. So I guess, you know, to sum that up, for me, it's about really focused on understanding that it's a continuous cycle of improving our customer experience. So it's not a project that we do once a year during planning. It has to be all the time, and there has to be this drumbeat of customer feedback coming into us. I think also what's really changed for us is that understanding that it's a cross-functional effort. So it doesn't just sit within the customer service team or within you know, sales reps' responsibility. It has to involve departments. So finance have played a huge role, for example, for us during the pandemic, where our customers, one of their big pain points was around getting access to credit or, you know, repaying. So that kind of inclusion of other departments in relation to solving those customer pain points is really important. And then I think, again, it's about making sure that we're set up to make choices, you know, where we strategically need to play. So prioritization, you know, what's going to make the difference? You know, what do we need to focus on? Because we can't do everything, right? So I suppose ensuring that, you know, we're really, really aligned and clear on what will make the difference to improve our customer journey, and making sure then that we kind of prioritize those elements of it. I think, you know, finally, and again, I suppose this is something that's really been accelerated in Heineken, you know, during the pandemic. It's really kind of enabling an agile way of working. So I think, again, you know, over the last kind of 2 years, we've very much been focused on, you know, I guess, pivoting in terms of how we support our customers. You know, we've organized informative consultancy webinars to help them upskill when their doors were closed. So things like, you know, how to improve your social media presence, or staff training to keep your staff skills fresh during lockdown. And as we got ready to reopen, you know, we held customer and consumer sentiment sessions, you know, to really help our customers understand what they needed to focus on to ensure that their customers felt safe when they were returning to the trade. So I guess it was really about flipping that conversation from what was always very much traditionally sales focused and consultative focused to how we could help them, you know, during this unprecedented time. You know, so I think that that's been really important. Equally, our customer service team. So, you know, overnight they needed to be enabled to work from home. So we worked really closely with our IT department to find solutions to make this happen, essentially overnight. You know, initially we forwarded our office phones to mobiles, the mobile phones of our agents, and then we moved to a virtual phone solution, a jobber on their desktops. So again, that ability to collaborate, to act in an agile way, to get things done quickly, really kind of helped us respond to those changing customer needs, you know, in a time that was obviously very unprecedented. And I think kind of, you know, our customer service team overnight went from being a team sort of who supported customers in quite a traditional way, so to place their orders and to manage the day-to-day running of their pubs, to a team of agents that essentially needed to be a shoulder to cry on for our customers who were absolutely at their lowest. So I think, you know, that need for them to be empathetic and really kind of understand what our customers were going through was absolutely key. And at that time, you know, we absolutely focused on giving our customer agents the time to have those conversations with customers. You know, we kept our team at full capacity, and that for us was extremely important to make sure that resource was absolutely there for our customers.
Yeah, that's a lot of input already, Emma Jane. Thank you for that. One thing I would like to query a little bit further. You said that your agents who traditionally mainly dealt with sales orders now had to become more of a consultant, almost like a counselor. You said somebody to give a shoulder to cry on. I mean, that must have been very difficult to equip them emotionally. And to be able to take on that responsibility. And what else? How else do you support your agents in their job?
Yeah, for sure. Look, I think again, it's back to that point about it being a cross-functional effort. So it was very much about us supporting our customer service agents, so feeding them with information and insight that we knew would help the customers at that time. So whether that be around, customer sentiment, so we were doing a huge amount of research within Heineken on how our consumers were feeling in relation to the pandemic, in relation to, feelings around safety, feelings around the hospitality sector. And we were kind of feeding those nuggets into our customer agents to allow them to ultimately add value to calls they were having with their customers at the time. So to reassure them in some cases around, positive consumer sentiment, but equally to kind of give them tips in relation to, as you look to reopening, here are the key things that consumers are going to be looking for within your pub. So, obviously a focus on hygiene, ensuring that you're, ultimately adhering to the rules and regulations and the standard kind of COVID safety regulations. So things like that. And I think also not putting pressure on the team in relation to resource was absolutely key. So as I said, there was kind of no reduction in capacity. So to give our agents the time to have those conversations with our customers. And I think we actually recorded our average call time during that time, particularly the first few months of the pandemic, went up about 20% per call. So the calls were longer, they were definitely more consultative. So giving the agents the time, first of all, to have those conversations, but also feeding them with the input and the information that was going to be useful for our customers was really key.
Thanks, Emma Jane. Alex, perhaps you can add to this in terms of what other technologies, I'm thinking of AI here, can perhaps be utilized in the contact center to augment and support the agents.
Yeah, I think a lot of people look at AI as a bit of a saving grace. It's not, as Steve pointed out, it's not going to replace the agent. And as Steve also pointed out, and Emma Jane has just corroborated, where the agent is very, very powerful is when they're having that complex, be it a complex product discussion, complex service discussion, or an emotional discussion with a customer. That's where the human to human comes in. And one of the things which we can do is we can try and take away some of the very routine things that customers might want to do, and do that over things like chat, with using a bot, for example, to take away the really trivial things, and therefore free up as much capacity. And it's not just capacity, back to Emma Jane's point, it's not just capacity in time to free up, it's emotional capacity. If you spend all your time doing trivial things, when someone's on the phone needing your real attention, then if you've been worn away, then you can't give them that. So AI can, and my view, it takes the trivial things away, but it then supplements the agent by not replacing them in any shape or form, but by giving them access to information. So, for example, the kind of thing that Emma Jane was talking about, it is possible these days for our systems to be listening to the conversation, to both legs of the conversation, and helping the agent understand how the customer's feeling, understand the sentiment real time, so they can change the way they're actually having the conversation. And also at the same time, we can be putting up information in front of the agent. And you have to, back to Emma Jane's point, you have to be very careful not to flood them with information. You have to just give them snippets that can add real value during that part of the conversation. So I think it's all about augmenting what the agent does to allow them to devote the emotional energy which is needed. Particularly, we've heard they become counsellors. In the last year or two, that there has been a change in the role of the agent, and therefore we need to give them the capacity, the holistic capacity to do that. That's where AI can help.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Back to you, Emma Jane. In terms of contact volume, did you see a big difference in terms of how many phone calls you received, or perhaps did your pub owners and landlords serve via self-service options?
No, so I think particularly during the pandemic again, and I totally corroborate the points that have just been made. You know, again, initially what we found was there was an increase. So I think again we had like an increase of about 35% in calls initially when we went into lockdown. So to our service agents. And what we found was, you know, customers just really needed a source of information. So obviously this was, you know, a time of huge uncertainty, and it was unprecedented. So I think for the initial kind of 3 months, we found that our agents were very much kind of, you know, their time was taken up kind of having those kind of longer conversations and helping from an informative perspective. I think, you know, at that time and sort of the 12 months before the pandemic, we had been actively kind of seeking to bring more digital solutions to support our customer service agents, and really to kind of support them having the time, I suppose, to have that more value add conversation on the calls. So, you know, today we have kind of 40%, 42% actually of our orders coming through a combination of IVR and our in-house B2B platform. And, you know, again, that's really kind of, I suppose, it's strategically really important for us to continue to increase that number, to, you know, as we've said, to really kind of free up our agents to enable them to have those kind of more proactive customer care conversations and essentially add value to our customers. And again, I think, you know, as Steve mentioned earlier, what's important is that the journey is joined up, and that customers, I guess, feel the experience is seamless regardless of what touch point they have chosen. So if their in has been through IVR or through digital to do the more sort of routine day-to-day tasks like placing an order, but equally when they do call an agent, that the agent has a one view, you know, of the customer story, and I think that's huge in relation to kind of ensuring we land that really positive customer experience every time.
Yeah, and I guess just to iterate a point that you made early on, it's all about knowing your customers and knowing their preferences, because I can imagine that in your line of business, it is very common to pick up the phone and place an order. But how do you see the uptake of channels like web chat or video? Is that something that would work for you and your customers?
So at the moment, no. I think it's definitely not something that we would kind of rule out in the future, but I think there's two reasons. For one, we have a relatively small customer base. So our customer base is about 7,000 customers nationally. And I think secondly, the nature of the business. So, you know, our customers are not sitting at a desk, you know, really during the day at all. They're in their pub serving, and they're in very kind of active roles. So it isn't a huge kind of benefit for them to engage in platforms like web chat. And it's something that we definitely haven't seen a demand for. Again, I think there is a certain element of the customer, so almost half of our customer base, who I guess have really kind of started to use and are benefiting from using online ordering platforms, and that's something I think that's just really tangible to them. And again, from our industry perspective, it makes sense. I think for now that's probably you know, satisfying you know, their needs, and ultimately, like, I don't see this changing in the near future. There's a huge focus on relationship building in our industry. So obviously at the cold face with our sales reps, but also at the end of the phone with our customer service agents. You know, and actually our customer service team are a key driver of our NPS, which is essentially the highest in Ireland among all alcohol suppliers, and it's one that we have a huge strategic focus on from a business perspective. So that human touch that we provide is very much appreciated and is essentially adding to business performance. Actually, just today we had a lovely piece of feedback from a customer who scored us a 10 in an NPS survey, And he said, excellent communication with your customer service staff. As a member of the older generation who feels very left behind by modern technology, I was greatly encouraged after both phone calls to your customer service team. So I think that just, again, just underpins that point of, yeah, the need for, you know, ultimately that richness of service that our agents can deliver to our customers.
Yeah, that really sort of emphasizes the idea of knowing what your customers want and how they want to communicate. That was a lovely piece of feedback that you had there, and I presume perhaps it will be difficult to maintain this high level of service over the next months. I could imagine Christmas is probably your busiest time of the year. How are you prepared for that time, and are you anticipating any delivery or supply chain issues, and how are you dealing with that?
There's a lot in that question. It certainly is the most wonderful time of the year for us in Heineken. And actually, in our on-trade business alone, so within our pub community, about 18% of our annual sales actually happen during the month of December. So it's extremely important for us, and we spend probably, you know, a good chunk of the year, so from definitely February, March, starting to prepare for that. And I think what's key for us to remember, particularly within my team, is that while it's our busiest period, it's also without doubt the busiest period for our customers. And it's also an extremely important time for our customers to maximize their business, because a lot of them, you know, bearing in mind a lot of our customers are small business owners, and they rely on this busy Christmas period to see them through the much more quieter months, you know, in January and February. So it's really, really important that we do everything we can, and we switch our whole focus to ensuring that we're actually delivering them a service, you know, that supports that essentially. So communication is by far our biggest focus from a customer service perspective during this period, and it's all about deliveries. So it switches obviously from being you know, a much more emotive territory maybe at other times of the year to very much focused on getting those deliveries and getting those orders out there, and ensuring that, you know, we're leaving our customers in a position where they're in a good stock position to deal with their demand and their businesses, and to really kind of maximize that time. So ultimately, I suppose what we try to do as much as possible is to offer our customers flexibility around delivery time throughout the month of December. And we also have like a special Christmas delivery schedule, and all our outbound messaging is switched to raising awareness with our customers about this. Actually, from this week, our call hold messaging switches to delivery reminders to prompt our customers, you know, to get prepared in time for the season. And, you know, small kind of messages like, you know, it's 3 weeks left of ordering time for before Christmas, things like that, just to really kind of keep it top of mind with our customers and ensure they're getting their orders in. And we also use our digital platforms to kind of push reminders and prompts out to our customers. So I think that's really key for us. And obviously we work very closely with our supply chain, but again, our planning happens months in advance. So we're really kind of managing obviously our stock, you know, very, very closely, and ensuring that that we don't disappoint any of our customers at this time.
Well, let's hope that Christmas can go ahead, and that the pubs are full and people will enjoy that special time together. Emma Jane, you said before how important face-to-face communication is in your business. Then I would like to pose the question to all of you: what do you make of those recent developments that Facebook is a part of when they announced their rebrand and their involvement in the metaverse? Do you think we are ready for this? Can you really see us communicating and collaborating in a virtual environment rather than sitting together in an office or meeting friends and family at home or in a pub?
I'll go first there. And
Thanks, Alex.
That's a big question. I think we're a long way from where some of the PR and the hype is. You know, at the end of the day, people are people. And back to some points that both Steve and Emma Jane have made, people are people. People deal with people, they like to deal with people. And whilst the pandemic has taught us to communicate remotely, I don't think we will get to near the level that Facebook or Metaverse are talking about. I think that will be some time. I think we can learn from some of those technologies. I see augmented reality more than virtual reality being much more important in customer service, particularly in things like retail, where you could be showing people things, or in help desk where you can be teaching people or helping them fix a problem. I think there is some technology that can have an impact, but I think that the whole virtual world is a little while away before it will be truly functional for most people.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd agree with what Alex said completely there about the augmented reality. And I also think that, this is almost like a solution looking for a problem. We haven't really sorted out the real world communications yet. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a nice idea. I don't think it's anything we need to worry about particularly yet. But yeah, I would say that the augmented stuff and linking that in with the kind of video and the niche channels, but as I said, they really demonstrate the retail and tech support and things like that. Yes, that confers or potentially confers a real advantage over something at the moment that is not quite there. But for everything else, I don't think we need to worry quite yet.
Okay, well, perhaps it will have its place in this kind of environment where we increasingly work remotely or from anywhere really. And if we talk about hybrid working, then I would like to talk a little bit more about the cloud as well. Thinking back to the beginning of the pandemic, I guess a lot of businesses perhaps rushed to implement cloud solutions just to ensure business continuity. Now, a year and a half on, do you think those solutions offer the right amount of functionality that businesses need? Are businesses equipped for the long haul, or what would your advice be on what sort of capabilities and functionalities organizations should be looking out for if they plan to move to the cloud, or perhaps invest in a different cloud contact center solution?
Is that aimed at, you want me to answer that one? Yeah.
I'm looking at you, Alex.
Okay, I can't see because I'm not using my AR headset. I couldn't see that statement. Yeah, I think the cloud is definitely very much come of age. I think the internet bandwidth we have available now is much more supportive. I think the whole communications infrastructure we have is much more supportive than it's ever been. I'm sad to say in some ways that I've been involved in the cloud in many incarnations over the years, but I think now is one that definitely has the wherewithal to be very, very sincere and credible, and lots of people are now using it. I think one thing that we've always supported things like home working in all of our software typically, but the pandemic has definitely, that need for home working has definitely pushed people that way. I know a big law firm who very well known around the world, who moved 4,500 people in a couple of days from an on-premise environment. They were planning to gradually move over a 2-year period from what do you call it, from one platform to another. They moved 4,500 people in a couple of days to the cloud. And so it's got the capability to do that without question. I think the one thing that I would say, and this is something that I suppose you would expect me to say, given the focus that we've always put in our software to integration, is make sure you can get the levels of integration that you need into your business process. That's hugely important, because for some people, they have that workflow really tied in from the first customer call all the way through, as Emma Jane talks about, to putting stuff in shelves in a pub. That whole workflow and that process has to be tied together. And I would say that if you can't integrate, you can't achieve that. So integration's a key thing there.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Alex. I would like to turn to our audience one more time and pose the question to them in terms of what their investment priorities are for the next year. So again, this is a multiple choice question. So if several of these are priorities for you, then please indicate so. I just read out the options while we wait. Contact center software migration to the cloud, video collaboration, digital communication channels, quality management and customer insights, or self-service options. So let's see what our audience is focusing on. Okay, I think this is it. Let's take a look at the result. Steve, Alex, do you have any thoughts on the results?
Yeah, I mean, I would have personally said digital and self-service would have come out the highest, but in fact, quality management and customer insights is even higher than that. So that's really interesting for me.
Yep.
Yeah, that is an interesting one for me, because I think, as you know, Astrid, that one of the teams I work with, I've spent an awful lot of time recently on the quality management and customer insight initiatives, and actually developed some technology to make that easier for people. So I'm pleased to see that. But I think, like Steve, I would have thought the digital channels would have been first, but I'm pleased to see the result of quality management and customer insight.
Yes, and I'm surprised that video didn't come up higher in the poll. But yeah, that's very interesting to see. So looking at the time, we're nearly at the end of our discussion. So I would like to ask each of you if you could share a top tip with us. What do you think our audience could take away in terms of advice on how to best prepare for the challenges and demands of the new year? Who would like to go first?
I'll go first, why not? I think I certainly talked a lot about technology today, but it's something that's, I'd have to say, understanding the customer journey, what the customer is trying to achieve, and think about, what do they want? What do they really want? They want to be able to get it done first time, and they want it done with the least effort. So if you approach everything from the customer's always trying to do that, and everything in terms of technology, business process, or indeed culture that comes off the back of that should always be referred back to, what's the customer thinking? They want it done quickly, they want it done easily.
Thanks, Steve. Emma Jane?
Yeah, look, I think back to kind of what I've talked a lot about today. For me, it's about ensuring that you've got a way to access that voice of your customer in a regular way, and have a drumbeat throughout the organization that ultimately brings that voice of the customer into the business, and then enabling teams to actually do something with that information. So it's not just about listening, it's that kind of active piece, and what you can do in an agile way to respond to those customer needs, to really kind of make sure you're continually improving the journey. And I think the second thing that we're very interested in Heineken at the moment is that idea around customer segmentation. So depending on your customer base, is there a way to not treat all customers the same and just apply a little bit more of a persona lens, particularly with large customer bases, so that again you can adapt your journey to make sure that you're catering to different customer needs and different customer kind of stages.
That's really good advice. Thank you. Alex?
I think one thing, we've talked a lot about AI. AI gets a huge amount of airtime in the world of customer interaction, and that's because it's important and it's got a lot of value to add. But one thing I would say is that in some applications of the technology in customer experience, you need to, it's really the tip of the iceberg. It's the rest of the iceberg you need to worry about, and that's knowledge management. I would say a little bit less focus on AI, a little bit more focus on knowledge management, I think will actually help drive better customer experience from a self-service point of view, and actually better agent augmentation in the contact center as well. So focus more on knowledge management sometimes is important.
Thank you. Thank you. Before we go, I would like to make our audience aware of the large pool of resources that we have available on our website. I would like to point out a few here. We've got the Enghouse Interactive Contact Center Solutions Your Way. This is a brochure outlining all the solutions that we have. Also helping you to make the right choice. We've got a buyer's guide that looks at which contact center solution to go for. And with the beginning of the new year, perhaps one of your priorities might be to save costs. So we also have a guide that helps you to save costs in the contact center whilst actually improving the customer service. And of course, we have a huge array of ContactBabel reports available to download for free on our website. And last but not least, a piece of bespoke research that focuses on supporting contact center remote working with collaboration tools. Right, I would like to thank our panelists for today's discussion. It was very interesting and very engaging to listen to you, and it's been a real pleasure to hear your insights on CX trends and predictions for the next year. And of course, a huge thank you to our audience for joining us today. I hope you found it worthwhile. And yeah, have a relaxing Christmas break and a happy and successful new year. It seems very early to say that, but I guess we're nearly there. But for now, enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.